Hello and welcome back to Franklin Covey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller. I'm your host now, almost 7 years. Can you believe Franklin Covey has tolerated me as the host of their twice weekly podcast for 7 years, nearly 500 interviews taped, where every Tuesday and Friday I'm privileged to ambassador for Franklin Covey. Fantastic interviews. Well, at least fantastic guests. I'm not sure how great the interviews are, but we try to shine our spotlight onto remarkable people who are commissioning to invest in your leadership skills, to make you more effective, in the words of our co-founder, Dr. Stephen Covey, who of course wrote the seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Each week, 2 times a week, we have conversations with CEOs, entrepreneurs, founders, academics, researchers, scientists, celebrities, movie stars, people that have invented or dedicated their lives to making a particular problem more solvable. In some cases, there are people that have gained some fame or have become well known for a tragedy that beset them, and they summon the courage and the strength and the vulnerability to not just survive it, but to live and teach through it. Today's guest is a little bit of a hybrid of all those things. He's a friend of mine and a longtime friend and associate of the Franklin Covey Company. David Graff is a well-known leadership organizational consultant, has written numerous books, and has a large consulting business since his departure from Franklin Covey, kind of like mine, in good standing. And he's written a series of books called 4 Lenses Parenting, of which there are 3 volumes. If you in any way are a caregiver, a nurturer, or a shepherd of young humans, whether you are a parent, perhaps you're a foster parent, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, a grandparent of some sort, you're going to want to check into today's conversation because this guy has expertise on parenting. David Graff, welcome back to On Leadership.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and share, my 43 years of experience in being a parent.
Now, I say welcome back because although it is your first interview on the podcast, it's welcome back to the family because you're still very much well regarded in the broad Franklin Covey Company. David, you are a prolific author. You are an expert in organizational design and leadership development. You have a particular passion around helping organizations, nonprofits, governmental, for-profits help their employees, their leaders become better parents. We know the correlation between the stress that being a parent can bring into our day lives professionally as well. So today we're going to get into all ideas around what this 4 lenses concept means and hopefully give me and a few million listeners some reprieve on our parenting. Rewind a couple of decades. You now both split your time between Utah and Hawaii. You're broadcasting today from your home in Hawaii. Remind all of our listeners and viewers of your professional journey. You have a little bit of a military experience as well. Let's talk about that, and then we'll dive into parenting. My least favorite topic.
So yeah, I started my journey. 43 years. We're coming up on 43 years of being married here in just a couple of weeks to my wife Sarah. Joined the military right away. Spent 27 years in an Air Force career. During that career, I came in touch with Franklin Covey. And so in 1998, I actually got certified in 7 habits and started my journey, which I would say probably is really the foundation of everything that I do, is centered in that content as a parent, as a human, as a leader. And so just been passionate about that. We've got 7 children that are all over the world right now. We've got 17 grandkids. Probably I really got my most passion around this idea of 4 lenses, which is a temperament-based 4-factor model that we use. Been used for almost 30 years now. Really started figuring out how can I use this to help military families initially, and helping them in dealing with the deployments and all the stresses of the military life brings. And so we designed some courses around that and have really probably have ran tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of military members and their families through our program with a lot of success in helping them deal with the stress of military family. And then so I said, well, if it can help a military family, why don't we expand it? And that's what led to the creation of these books, to say, why don't we see if we can make a difference in the world through sharing this message that has been so successful for 30 years. And so that's what kind of brought us here today. We've got these great books. We talked about adaptive parenting. It's about resilience. And then the other part of my life in the consulting and leadership development side, it was interesting that one of the things I learned personally, which then I took into all of my strategic leadership work, is if you really want to know how to become a great leader, learn how to be a great leader at home first. And if you can learn the skills that are required to lead a 2-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, and in conjunction with a leadership team with me and my wife, if we can learn to do that well, then that would play right out into my professional life. And so I'm a big believer that if you focus on your personal life first, it will have a great impact in your professional life.
David, I've been a fan and follower of yours for many years. We have very little in common other than our mutual appreciation for the FranklinCovey content. I don't have 17 of anything. Well, that's not true. Champagne flutes and cufflinks. But it's remarkable that you can say with a straight face that you have 17 grandchildren, because this is not relatable. Okay, first and foremost, you've got a picture of 3 of your favorite kids behind you. Are the other 4 pariahs? I mean, what's going on with that? Are you got 4 black sheep?
So actually, the 3 kids behind me are me and my two sisters as children, and so we kind of that's a big part of who I am, is the experience that the 3 of us had in a home growing up, and it's unique, and it's really kind of, again, what started me on this journey is how do we all end up going down such different paths? We came out of the same home, we had the same experiences, which in some cases wasn't the best. Unlike most people, I mean, I don't know that there's a perfect home and a perfect family, but as we came out of that, and I started really trying to understand, so, why did one sister choose to go down this road and another, and then I chose to kind of go down the road that I went? How did that play out? We all came out of the same home. We were parented the same way. And that's what really got me understanding the differences of unique children and the differences that parents bring and how that all plays out in a family environment. So that's actually my sisters. And that's me as a little baby right there in the middle.
You cutie pie. My current sustained obsession is researching and understanding the impact that our epigenetics and our origin stories have on how we parent, how we lead, how we spouse. That's a verb. And so I'm excited to jump in to your concepts. The books that I want to highlight today are called 4 Lenses. It's a series of 3 volumes, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. You call it 4 Lenses Parenting. Would you take back a few moments to describe what does it mean to be an adaptive parent? What are the 4 lenses? And we'll talk a little bit about what you say are the 4 vibrant personalities of parenting: blue, gold, green, and orange. Answer some of those questions and we'll dive in.
So most people are familiar with Myers-Briggs. A lot of leaders have gone through that as an assessment. So Myers-Briggs has 16 personality types. That's a lot of complicated information, and a lot of people can't really take that and apply it in a very personal setting. It works in a great leadership setting. And so then a guy named David Kiersey came along, wrote a book called Please Understand Me, in which he identified out of the 16 personality types, there's 4 temperaments. And so we took the temperament concepts theory. It's actually been around for, 4,000 years. And we put colors to each of the different temperaments. And so each temperament has a unique set of values, skills, behaviors associated to it. And most of us operate out of what we refer to as our top 2. So we have the ability we're all whole human beings, and so we're made up of all 4 of these, which is a little bit different approach that we take as compared to assessing people and going, okay, now that you've taken your assessment, you are a X. We basically say, now that you've taken an assessment, you understand where your initial motivation comes from, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn and develop these other attributes associated to the other temperaments. So that's where the temperament and the 4 lenses come from. Each of the different colors represent one of those temperaments.
David, 3+ decades of your career, plus your Air Force experience, by the way, thank you for your service and that of your families, have been dedicated to understanding leadership, culture, organizational design, not just in the for-profit world or the military world, but also, as you've mentioned, in our families. From all of your collective research, what contributing factors most shape the way we parent?
So, yeah, I mean, even in the book, we refer to these external things that happen to each of us as we grow up. And one of the things that I've come to terms with and realized is that I create this model that I call character, right? So each of us have become who we become, and it's the essence of my character, of who I am as a human being. And that character was formed over the years of schools and homes and churches and friends and family and just as I've experiences that we've had over our lives. And so that kind of forms. But what I really find, though, is at the core of character, the core of Dave Graff's character, exists this thing called temperament. And that is the uniqueness that I bring to the world that's different than anybody else. Although, we have these four basic temperaments, but it's not just one temperament. It's just this combination of what makes me up as a human being. And so as I look at how I've developed, for the last 65 years, that has been through the lens of this temperament. So example, when we had, in our home and our family and certain things would happen, as they happened, I was viewing it through my lens of my temperament, which then basically solidified how I believe that was good or that was bad, right? Or that was effective or not effective, which then has led me to believe over my lifetime that there are certain things, certain ways to parent that are effective, and there are certain ways that aren't effective, certain ways to lead and certain ways not to lead. And so if I want to change any of those, though, here's the key is if I ever want to change any of those, I've got to get back to what I call just the very basic character component, which is my temperament, and understand that. And then as I begin to try to change and improve, I can use that knowledge to help me to understand, well, is my temperament going to positively or negatively impact my ability to be a great parent, to be a great leader?
David, it's no secret for those who follow me on social media, I'm also writing a parenting book. I think it's my eighth or ninth book. And I'm not an expert in parenting. I'm a practitioner. There's a difference. I think you're both an expert and a practitioner. Because I'm the host, I get to ask the questions. I'm going to do a speed round with you. Okay. I'm going to ask you a half dozen plus questions. And I want kind of whatever is the first thing that comes to your mind. I want you to give me your insight on it from your expertise, but also as the co-parent with your wife of 7 children. My wife and I, as you know, have 3 young boys that are 10, 12, and 14. I think it was Kristen Mackey, who was on our program recently, that taught me this concept of our frequency, my frequency. I have a very high frequency. I'm a very intense, anxious person. I don't suffer from anxiety, except between the hours of 5 a.m. and midnight, because of my children when they're awake.
Right.
Talk about how someone understands their temperament, what kind of introspection is needed, and the impact it has on our children.
So, in fact, the question you just asked is the essence of our whole program. Is that we talk about emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is really the key. And so, the question is, am I aware of? I call it how I'm showing up to my children, to my spouse, to my partner, to the folks that I lead. So, am I aware of how I'm showing up? And so, the first thing that I do is, well, am I aware of how I'm showing up from a temperament perspective? So, I happen to be an orange gold in terms of our temperament, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But and what that means is that as I'm showing up, I'm just kind of showing up just to see what's happening and then make decisions on what to do. When I was growing up with my children, and I say that literally, as I was growing up with my children, I would just show up that way. And I had a daughter that just couldn't. That was very frustrating to her, because she wanted to know what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, what she needs to wear. Whether, she needed the order to it, and I was just kind of like, hey, let's just figure out what we're going to do. And so that's part of it, is the self-awareness component. When we talk about that, there's just really understanding, what is my temperament, and the idea about temperament just gives us a language. That's all it does. It just gives us a language that we can begin to use. And within our family, for example, all of our children understood the language and could talk. We could talk using that language to help each other grow.
David, I think this is worth belaboring. I don't use this word very often to describe myself, but I was embarrassed when I started to really understand how little I I acknowledged my temperament, my frequency, if you will. I know I'm an intense person, but I don't see myself as others see me, right? Welcome to humanity. And I've always kind of prided myself on being pretty self-aware, but I think I have generally been a really poorly self-aware parent, understanding the negative impact that my intensity has brought to my children. I mean, it's going to help them well in college and discipline and, accomplishment and focus. But I write in the book that I'm authoring, my Parenting Mess series, I write about how there's a chapter dedicated to early warning signs. Everyone knows I'm Catholic, and my wife is not Catholic, and I take our 3 boys to church on Sundays, and she joins us quite regularly. Well, when Thatcher, our oldest, was around 1, he began to pick his face pretty consistently, and it looked as if he had chickenpox for a year. And for me, I was an older parent, right? I was, I think, 42 when we had Thatcher, and I had no idea how to parent. I didn't really want to parent. I didn't particularly want kids. Today, I love my children. Parenting is not my calling. By the way, I think you can be a good person and have children and not be a great parent, or any combination of that. But it's interesting, people used to ask me at church, does Thatcher have chickenpox? I'm thinking, what are you talking about? He's had the chickenpox vaccine. He doesn't have chickenpox. And it wasn't until like a decade later, as I'm writing this book, I began to connect. Thatcher's picking of his face, although clinically not, confirmed, was definitely his anxiety responding to my frequency, which was sort of like a metronome on a piano, kind of off the chart. I was growing up with my child, even though I was 40. Talk about the biggest area of improvement we have as parents to really understand. I kind of asked this question earlier, but this is such a foundational point, is to understand the impact we have on our children. How do we uncover it? Do we have to ask other people to watch us? Do we ask our children, our toddlers? Give us a little more on this, because this is the foundation of everything.
Right. So what I found, Scott, is that at the foundation of relationships is this idea of trust, right? And the ability to build trust. And that doesn't matter whether I'm at home or at work or whatever it is. Trust is the key, right? It's this foundation. And to build trust, I've got to build a relationship. And to build a relationship, it needs to be understood that there's 2 parties that are working towards something. And I think that what I've learned, to me, is the key is to understand what that something is, right? Simon Sinek talks about the big why, right? I need to understand not what my why is, because I have what my why is as a parent. I don't understand what my kids' why is because they're little, and so I'm going to teach them what their why is. That's a lot of parents believe that. I'm going to instill upon them their big why, to go to college, to do these things, to become this type of human being. What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? And it wasn't until I had my first teenager, and he's driving cars, and he was irresponsible, and and all of a sudden I just became very. I just didn't understand, lost from a parenting perspective. I'm like, what do I do? And I can tell you what I wanted to do from my perspective is ground him, take his car away. He'll never drive again for the rest of his life for some of the things that he was doing. And then it hit me again from a 7 Habits perspective. It really helped me to stop, pause, reflect, to sit there and say, okay, so what are we about? And that's probably been the most powerful question that I've learned to help me to understand how to have a much better relationship, how to build trust, is I've got to get down to what are we about? And so I sat down with my son and I said, so what are we about? What are we trying to do here, right? You're 16, I'm 36. So what are we trying to do here? Because it's not working. And when we finally sat down and I really understood, seek first to understand, right? Really understood what he was trying to accomplish in his life. And he understood what I was trying to accomplish as a parent, that we were able to come to terms with, well, what do we need to do to make this happen? And so I think that is, when I talk about I need to be aware of how I'm showing up and the impact it's having on those I'm showing up to, I think that the key to that is just being able to understand and observe behavior. So I'm a behavioralist, I guess is the way I'll put it. And I can observe my behavior. I can observe their behavior, and it's in the observation of behavior that I can see, are we connecting or not connecting? So I don't know if that helps or not, but it really does. It does help me to stop and pause and say, what are we about? 15-year-old, 3-year-old, whatever it is. And that has made me just really help me from a parenting perspective to build trust, build a relationship, which is the foundation of this whole process.
I love this concept of asking yourself, how do I want to show up right now? But I'm still fixated on that. When you were 20, you had a 1-year-old. When I was 20, I could barely remember to pay the power bill and would come home and the lights would be turned off because I hadn't paid the power bill.
Hey, Scott, it was probably a good thing that I was 20 and had a 1-year-old because I needed to grow up with my children. Otherwise, I don't know if any of us would have survived.
From your broad experience, what's the most common mistake parents make with toddlers and young children?
Two things. One, I think that they believe that it's their responsibility to, in the book we talk about, painting and this palettes and these kind of things, but it really is the foundation of a child is laid in those earlier years. And unfortunately, I think the biggest mistake that we make is that, Stephen had a quote that I love. It's on the front of our 4 Lenses kits in all of our books. It says, all of us think we see the world as it is, when in reality, we're just seeing it as we are, right? And I think that's the issue, is that when I'm parenting a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old, whatever it is, I think that they're going to be a great human being if I can raise them to grow up and see the world the way I see the world, because how I see the world is awesome, right? And so that, I think, as compared to just stopping and pausing and thinking, okay, how is this unique child, right? What is at the core of who they are? And then what is my personality, and how do I ensure that I can help use my strengths to help develop them, that we can grow and be successful as a family, as a group collectively.
David, fast forward then a little bit to the teenage years. I mentioned we have 3 boys that are 10, 12, and 14. The 14-year one is full-fledged in puberty, cannot say a civil word to his mother, is quite frankly a jackass most days. 4.0 in high school, very self-directed. He's crushing it. Utah loves him. And then he walks in the front door, right? And it's a very different experience. What do you need to remind Stephanie and I about what traps not to fall into with these teen and tween years?
So it's interesting in the teen and tween years, what ends up happening from almost a personality temperament perspective is that those are the years that the child starts to try to become their own human, right? I've been raised with these parents and I get it type of thing, but I'm going to become my own human being now. And so I don't like, and I refer to it as one of our temperaments. It's called the orange temperament. I think all teenagers go through a period of time where they literally just become, in my language, a very low mature orange, right? Because oranges are the ones that are trying to break away, or green, but it's really this orange temperament that's wanting freedom. They don't want to be bound down by rules. They don't want to be overseen by other human beings. I want to be independent, right? And so those teen tween years are where the child's trying to figure out how to become independent. So that's the one knowledge. But the way that you overcome that, again, if we have this language, it's one thing just to allow a child to do whatever it is they're doing based off of, their temperament. But one of the things that we've got to learn as we grow up, especially as human beings, is that I don't get to go through life in a vacuum as my only temperament, right? That I've got to learn how to interact appropriately with other human beings. And so we just use the language, right? Because it comes out in behavior. And so we could talk about it from a teen perspective as like, your behavior of how you treat me is not appropriate in terms of our goals of building trust and growing together. So let's just talk about what would be behaviors that could help us, right? And it might be a different personality behavior that needs to be developed. It might be a different temperament behavior that needs to be developed. But if we use the language, I'm big on language, framework, and process. If our family understands the language, then we can actually help each other. My kids, when I started this journey of change My kids they became my biggest coach. They loved it. As I was constantly trying to figure out how do I become better at who I am as a dad and a husband. And so I gave them permission to call me out, which then also allowed me to give me permission to be able to identify, hey, your current behavior is not appropriate. What would be a more appropriate way of dealing with whatever it is that you're dealing with? So I think understanding behavior and temperament and behavior are almost, they're intrinsically tied. I can pretty much see a certain behavior and realize that's a gold behavior, that's a green behavior. And so let's talk about how that and the impact. And if you continue that behavior, what will be the long-term impact? And is that what you're wanting to get to? Is that your intent? When you come home and abuse me every day, is your intent so that we end up destroying our relationship and that the love that we have with each other goes away? Is that what your intent is? And then they just stop and go, no, not at all. It's like, well, what would be a better way to appropriately behave?
After 6 years, I know our audience, hundreds of thousands of people are going to rewind this about 3 minutes and listen to this over and over and over again. By the way, it's people like you that make people like me look bad. I'm kind of riveted listening to you because I'm seeing a role play with my son and I, who's already texted me 5 times today about his demands after school. Love you, son. Okay, I saw a social meme recently that said, children don't need parents. They just need to borrow your prefrontal cortex for a few years to keep them safe.
Right. Well, Scott, I'll give you real quick. There's an example. My son came from school and he had an F in his math class. And he's a very, very smart, he had an F. I'm like, well, why did you have an F? Because the teacher's an idiot, Dad. And I'm like, okay. That. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're the one that has the F, so let's talk about this. And what it came down to was that he did the test, he got all the answers right, but he didn't show his work. So she was a high gold teacher expecting children to follow the rules, and he was not. And so he was willing to just go, I'll take an F, right? I'll just take an F because the teacher's an idiot. But when we talked about the long-term impact, well, you could choose to do that, and that behavior could prove you well. But how will that behavior help you 10 years from now when you're trying to get a job, when you're trying to go to college, when you're trying to raise children? How will that behavior? And so we were able to talk about that specific behavior and go, sometimes in life we need to tap into other parts of our personalities and temperaments to help us be more successful in achieving the things that we are trying to achieve. And so it's in the book we talk about how do we move from basically me to we, and that is the whole concept, is moving beyond myself and understanding that we are on a journey together.
I'm going to pay you a compliment. Why you don't have a daily podcast or radio program is beyond me, because the things that you are talking about right now are not very ethereal. These are practical, everyday issues that we all face. I'll have to tell you, I've never met someone that's done a better job than you have at taking sort of organizational behavior, design, leadership principles and transferring them into the home. Because we all know our careers, our leadership careers, how we are promoted, why we are fired, why we are hired is a direct reflection of our temperaments, our personalities, what we bring from the home into the workplace. As I mentioned earlier, our origin stories.
Right.
Let's talk about the 4 colors very quickly. Give me 20 seconds on each so people can have context as we're ending our conversation here.
So the different temperaments, again, line to Myers-Briggs, so I'll use a little bit of language that people can relate to. So the green temperament is what we refer to as intuitive thinkers, so the NT of the Myers-Briggs, and they are about competence. It's about their personal competence. They're smart, they're intelligent, they're engineers, they're scientists, and they're highly independent of humans. They don't need humanity to do what it is they do. And so they go through life with this idea of constantly striving for perfection. So that's the green temperament. The opposite of that temperament is what we refer to as our blue temperament. They're the NFs of the world, intuitive feelers. And their whole purpose and mission is relationships. It's about people. It's about connecting. And so the green and the blues are in conflict with each other because the greens are going through life going, I don't even have feelings. Feelings don't matter. Whereas the blues are like, I feel. And so there's that dynamic that's going on. Then you have on the other side of opposites, we have the gold, which is what we call the sensory judgers from a Myers-Briggs perspective, the SJs of the world. And their whole mantra is putting order and structure to the world. It's we've got to have order, we got to have structure, there's processes, there's timelines. If 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late from a gold perspective, right? And so they're going through the world trying to make sure that everyone's doing what they should be doing and so on and so forth. The opposite of that is our oranges, which are sensory perceivers, and they're motivated and driven by freedom, the ability to do what I want, when I want, how I want. And so that's where the conflict comes with the golds, is the oranges are showing up to work, or they're showing up even in our, like I did as an orange parent, I just showed up, or I'd say, hey, Saturday, we're going to go to the science center. And then we show up Saturday morning like, I didn't really feel like doing the science center today. So today we're going to go to the beach. And again, my gold children are like, wait, they didn't even know how to make that transition, right? Whereas the orange is just like, hey, I'll just do what I want when I want and go through life. So those are the four temperaments, how they play out. But one of the things that we're really clear about through this process is nobody's any one. We're all a combination of all four. The question is that how aware am I of my blind spots? So, for example, I'm an orange gold. I just happened to marry Sarah, who is a green blue. So we are literally diametrically opposed to each other from a temperament perspective, which then gives us the ability, as we had 7 children, to be able to tap into any of the temperaments to help any of our children. And I'll just leave this as a final note. The thing about that I realize that I don't profess is that, we identified the temperaments of all of our children, and we said, okay, you get the blue kids, I'll get the gold kids and the orange kids. What we did do say is, I don't have the ability to help our blue children today, but I want to watch you. I want to watch and observe how you do it, so that over time I can learn how to be more kind, loving, relationship oriented. So we have the capacity, but a lot of times we've learned to outsource, for example, our weaknesses. We outsource them to somebody else. And I'm not big on outsourcing. I'm big on identifying, and then how do I get coached so that I can be more effective with my blue children and my green children.
David, over the course of multiple podcasts and an iHeart radio program, I'm now close to 750 interviews of some of the world's most renowned thought leaders and authors, practitioners, consultants like yourself. I'll tell you, one of the top 3 profound conversations I had was with the now former Chief Learning Officer at Microsoft. And for about a year, I asked every guest the same question. I said, hey, what skill do my 3 sons need to learn to get a job at Microsoft? It was more sort of a metaphor than like literally at Microsoft. And, I have all kinds of answers. They usually congeal around interpersonal skills, communication, empathy, reading the room, being able to read the body language. Occasionally, you get the AI coding question, but usually they're almost always around interpersonal skills. Even from CEOs of major tech companies like Intel and Microsoft and Google and others. And then I interviewed the CLO of Microsoft, and he said, without a doubt, it's the ability to discern fact from fiction, right? In a world full of lies and mistruths and trolls and misinformation and AI duping and fraud, your ability to tell what is true from what is not true is a discerning skill, especially as misinformation exponentiates with video and fake quotes and all of that. And I think that's a really wise answer. Top that, complement that. What skill, it's 2025 now, what skill do you think my children need to learn to thrive in a world that is going to be unrecognizable in 5 years?
I would say, and this will probably resonate with you, I think the number one skill that I've learned that will sustain time is the ability to understand how to connect, communicate, and engage with human beings to build trust. Resilience is at the core of everything that I'm trying to do, is how do we build resilient families? How do we build resilient teams at work? And at the core of this idea of resilience is this foundation of trust. But trust comes because I understand you, we have a purpose together. And now how do I connect in ways that I can help you see that purpose, we see the purpose, and we work together? So to me, it's pretty clear that at the core of me as a human being, but to get there, I need to have this idea of being self-aware and be able to manage myself so that as I begin to connect and communicate with my child, as you do with your sons, for example, that in every instance that I'm communicating, we're building the relationship. We're strengthening the root structure of our redwood trees. And I know you know that analogy, that resilience comes because we are tied, intrinsically tied at a deep level emotionally with humans. And that's what helps us weather the storm. That's what helps us move from an organizational change initiatives and whatnot. It's the connectiveness of the humans, along with then the ability to be smart and intelligent. And so all four temperaments are required. But as a human, the number one thing that I'm striving to do is constantly look at what is the relationship, what are we trying to accomplish, and how do I build the strength in this relationship so that we can move forward and be successful.
David, at my invitation, I'm sure there are lots of people listening that perhaps have the budget for a conference in their company. Maybe they have a parenting employee resource group. Perhaps they're a school or a university, a federal agency, or even ecclesiastic organization. If someone is interested in 2025 investing in the parenting skills of their constituency, how does someone engage with you?
Well, first off, I'd say go right to our website. We've just updated and we've actually got 4 lines of effort that we're trying to have an impact. So if you go to theshipleycompany.com, you'll see on there that you can reach us from a parenting perspective, from a leadership perspective. We do coaching and provide and train coaches, so we can do coaching from that perspective. And then our military clients have a very specific military pages associated with that. So I would say come find me right there at theshipleycompany.com, and we'll look forward to answering any questions that you have.
And David, if I'm not mistaken, you can buy the 3-volume series wherever books are sold, specifically on Amazon as well. The series is called 4 Lenses Parenting, volumes 1, 2, and 3. One of my takeaways is to work on my temperament, my frequency, and how I am showing up. I love that role play you gave. I'm going to use it with my son, right? If your goal is to do this, this, and this, that's working. I don't think that's the goal that you're searching out for. I'll text you around 3:20 today when he's in my car from 10th grade. David Graff, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.